Hi guys, welcome to Love and Lust Audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks. So please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it. Well, let's go to read this book, Mia's 5 Alphas, Part 5, Chapter 41 to 50. Chapter 41, Please Help Willard. I wanted to jump up and ask him to heal Willard, but my hand was held down by wolf claws. Willard tried his best to raise his head and said in an extremely weak voice, "Mia, don't. I would rather die than ask help from such a despicable person." I really wondered if he was still the Willard I used to know. He had always been gentle and modest. I couldn't figure out his hostility to Kakosim. The pads of the wolf claws were so cold, which made my heart skip a beat again. This was not a good sign. I held his head with my hands and kept stroking his fur. No, Willard, can you just believe him? I looked back at Kasim. Kasim, can you help him? Kasim frowned out of the blue and looked at the huge wolf in my arms. He suddenly pouted. But Mia, you have to promise me that you'll stay by my side from now on. I'm the one who cares about you more than anyone else. Willard raised his head and lowered it again. His body was trembling slightly, and so was my heart. Moon Goddess, please bless him. Please don't let anything happen to him. Later on, I found out what Willard was thinking. It was true that he almost couldn't make it, but he was also pissed off at Kasim. He always accused Kasim of being a hypocrite. Hey, Kasim, what do you think you are doing? I couldn't help but reprimand him. This is really not the right time to say this. I won't give up on you for anyone, nor will I give up on them for you. If you really don't want to help him, fine. I don't need your help. I'll save him myself. As I spoke, I stroked Willard's wolf head. His fur was already starting to dry up. I knew that this was a sign of his life slipping away. I had to save him. Kasim was probably concerned about me. He reached out in an attempt to pull me away, but I shook him off. I didn't want him to help me anymore, even if I had to sacrifice myself. I had to save Willard. My hand fell on his wound, and I prayed silently, "Oh, Moon Goddess, give me strength. I want to save him. I can't watch him die like this. My power is weak. My dear Moon Goddess, is there nothing I can do to help him?" I tried to mobilize the energy in my body again, but it was useless. Willard shook his head in pain. "Mia, stop trying. It will drain you and drag you down. Just leave." I knew that he didn't want to put me on the spot. He was afraid that I would exhaust all my energy and die slowly here with him. I couldn't help but hug his head and say in a voice cracking with emotion, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Willard. It's all my fault." Kissing his eyes, I wondered if the kind boy who had been so supportive of me was going to die in my arms. My heart almost broke. Kasim finally stopped fooling around. He pulled me away and frowned at me. Then he said, like a spoiled child, "Mia, is he more important than me to you? You know that I love you and can't bear to see you get upset. Are you doing this on purpose? All right. I'd rather save him than see you give up your life for him. Just leave it to me." Kasim's hand reached out to Willard and caressed his wound. Willard seemed to want to resist, but he was too weak to move. Kasim's hand gave off a pale blue halo. His palm became transparent, and the blue light kept spreading out like stars falling into the dust. These stars slowly landed on Willard's wound. Some seeped down and some piled up on it. But soon, these blue stars began to change color. Some turned red and some turned black. Soon, there was a large number of these blue stars that filled his body and flowed down his wounds. I saw these black and red stars flowing to the ground. The wounds on Willard's body were healing at a visible speed. I was overjoyed. I didn't expect Kasim to have such an ability. He had a healing spell that could remove the poison in him. I found myself crying. "Willard, hang in there. Kasim will help you. Look, it's working." Kasim's hands were still emitting blue stars. Now in my eyes, these stars were blue elves. They were removing the poison in Willard's body and healing his wounds. The torn muscles were also healing rapidly. I couldn't help but cheer. That's great. That's great. Willard, you'll be... Not long after, the blue light on Kasim's hand began to fade. His palm slowly returned to normal. The blue light no longer flew out, and Willard, who was lying on the ground, also turned back into his human form. I couldn't help but walk over and hug him. Willard, you look amazing. I told you he'd help you. Willard slowly raised his head. The wounds on his body had already healed, but he still looked somewhat pale and weak. He leaned against my chest and looked at Kasim with a conflicted gaze. I could see clearly the mixed feelings in his eyes. There was disgust, but relief as well. I couldn't figure out what happened between them. I didn't know why all of them were so hostile toward Kasim. I looked back at Kasim and shrugged. The expression on my face had become as cute as before. Put down Willard, put my arms around Kasim's neck and kissed him hard on the mouth. Consider this your reward, I said happily. I was really happy. The fact that Willard was going to recover was more important than anything else. I helped Willard up again. Willard looked at me and saw our intimate actions just now. His eyes actually became a little sad. I was at a loss. I understood how each of them felt about me, but I didn't understand my feelings for each of them. I didn't even dare to think about the future. What had happened during this expedition had already changed us. Right now, I wanted each of them to live in peace. As for what would happen in the future, I didn't know what to do either. I was already a little confused and couldn't explain it clearly. I admitted that I liked Krell's arrogance and also liked Simon's gentleness and thoughtfulness. His affection infatuated me. Meanwhile, Lucas always knew how to make people happy. I was crazy about Willard's calmness and silent support. I was even obsessed with a kid like Kasim. Something must have been very wrong with me. Was I insane? Chapter 42, Kasim fights alone. I looked away from Willard's gaze and decided to put these things as far in the back of my head as I could until this expedition was over. I smiled and said, Kasim, that was really impressive. I didn't expect you to have such an ability. Kasim proudly stood with his arm crossed, holding a cool posture and said, don't forget, I'm the next alpha. How can I become the alpha if I'm ordinary? Did you underestimate me? All I wanted was for Willard to be safe. I was extremely happy. Willard was in much better shape now. His injuries had already healed. I held Willard's arm and looked up with a smile. That's wonderful, Willard. You're doing so well. I'm so happy for you. How are you feeling right now? Willard's voice was still a little weak. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. I'll be fine after some rest. I had to admit that he really had a strong physique now, that he has recovered. We had to consider moving forward. According to the map, there was not much ground to cover. Before we got to the mysterious treasure, how can we keep moving? What else will we discover? As I pondered, I looked up and realized that Willard and Kasim were still tense with each other. I couldn't help but sigh. Willard, all right, don't be like this after all. Kasim saved you. Wouldn't it be better for us to continue searching for the treasure together? Willard obviously wouldn't disobey me. Another smile appeared on his face. He ran his hand through my hair and said softly, sure, anything you say. As we continued our journey, we would encounter a few lone wolves from time to time. However, this was not a threat to Willard and Kasim. What I did not expect was for Kasim to be so powerful previously. He really did not show it at all. Willard was not friendly to him and tried what he could to avoid him. This really annoyed me. I didn't know what was going on. Kasim didn't seem to care at all. He would always stick by my side with a cheeky smile. Being stuck between the two of them began to give me a headache. We took the treasure map and continued walking along the stream. Kasim took my hand and let me follow behind him. His hand was chubby and soft, just like him. I just didn't understand why the others hated him so much. Willard walked slowly on purpose. I didn't know what he was up to again. I called out to him. Willard, pick it up. Don't lose us. It's not safe here. Willard. I wasn't sure what Kasim's purpose for saving me was. However, he had always kept me on my toes. Only a silly girl like Mia would be fooled by him. I had come with them for Mia's sake. I didn't know what Kasim would do to her. Right now, everyone knew Mia's identity, and everyone was playing fair in the game for her heart. Except for Kasim. He was a bit shady and even despicable. I didn't know what he was trying to do persuading Mia to come here. Those giant wolves just now. I frowned. I really couldn't figure out what those wolves had to do with Kasima. However, their appearance was too much of a coincidence, and it just so happened that he also had this kind of healing and detoxification ability. When was Maya going to see him for who he is? When I saw Kasim holding Mia's hand in front of me, I was overcome with bitterness. Mia, I really liked you and loved you. I didn't want anything bad to happen to you. I hope you would be happy, but I didn't want you to be deceived by others. Kasim, just wait. I will definitely expose you for the man you really are. I won't let any details slip away from my eye. That aside, the more important thing was to ensure Mia's safety. We walked along the mountain path for a long time. The surroundings grew even more desolate. We still had to avoid my brother and the others. I knew that my brother was angry. He could not tolerate his betrayal, but how could he go so far as to imprison Mia? I could already imagine how furious my brother would be when he found out that the three of us were missing. He hated this kind of betrayal the most, but I was his biological brother, and the love of his life was also with us. The words "his love of his life" simply cut at my heart. Why didn't Mia love me? Suddenly, a few giant wolves appeared in front of us and blocked our path. It seemed that this path was really filled with danger. Kasim was already standing protectively in front of Mia. I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. Since you like to be a hero, I could just play along. I pretended to be shocked and appeared extremely weak. When Mia turned around to look at me, it was obvious that she was also worried about my injury. I pretended to shake my head at her to indicate that I was fine. But she looked visibly worried. Kasim let go of her and prepared to fight. Mia took the opportunity to run over to me and support me. Willard, are you all right? You still hurt. I nodded weakly. Yes, but it's okay. Just stand behind me. I'll protect you. Mia looked touched, but she grabbed me again. No, Willard, don't go. Kasim and I will deal with it. You haven't fully recovered yet. I can't let you take any more risks. Her words touched me. The softness of her palm made me want to hug her. Oh, my girl, you're so sweet. How could I bear to put you in danger? Sure enough, Kasim had already rushed up to fight. A few giant wolves were skinny and hungry. It was obvious that they hadn't eaten anything for a long time. They looked at us with blue light in their eyes as if they wanted to tear us apart and swallow us raw. We must be in over their head. Kasim had already transformed into a huge wolf and was fighting with them. He even turned around and shouted at me, "Willard, quick, bring her over here first. I'll cover her." Dante let Mia get hurt. That was exactly what I wanted. I pulled Maya away and rushed forward. Mia still wanted to help Kasim, but I had already pulled her back. Mia, don't go. He can handle it. Your safety is the most important thing now. We quickly rushed over, bypassed the hungry wolves, and continued to run forward. Mia still wanted to turn back, but I wouldn't give her another chance. Kasim was too good at acting. I even suspected that these hungry wolves were another trick of Kasim's. I had to be careful of him at all times. I heard fighting and hissing sounds behind me. I didn't need to look back to know that Kasim was fighting those hungry wolves. Chapter 43. More wolves in the way. With Kasim blocking the wolves, they weren't able to come near us. I slowly stopped. This made me feel a little strange. I wondered if they'd just walk away. I wanted to see what was going on, but a few huge rocks blocked my vision. I pushed Mia into the corner behind the boulder and said, "Mia, listen, stay here and remain hidden. I'm gonna see if Kasim needs help." Mia was really a gullible girl. She nodded vigorously. "But, Willard, you have to be careful too. I don't want you to get hurt again. You haven't fully recovered yet." I felt warm. Her eyes were filled with concern at this moment. I believed that I meant a lot to her. I couldn't help but stop and hug her gently. She stroked my cheek and said earnestly, "Willard, you have to believe that I'm really worried about you. Can you promise me to take care of yourself?" Her gaze was so clear that it made me feel like everything I was doing was a sin. In her presence, I only wanted to repent. I was lying to her. I wanted to say what was in my heart now, but I finally held it in. "Moon goddess, why would you show up in my life like this?" Her hair was a little messy and even had some withered grass in it from running, making her look a little disheveled and cute. Her red lips were so tempting that I couldn't help but lower my head and plant a kiss on her lips. It looked like I caught her off guard. Her body was a little stiff as she stared at me with widened eyes. I giggled. "Good girl. Remember, don't come out until you're called. Just stay here. I don't want to worry about you." Perhaps Maya noticed something from my expression. She looked at me seriously. "Moon goddess, you know that I like you. But why are you still trying to tempt me like this?" I kissed her passionately before breaking away and then fled before it went too far. I transformed, jumped over boulders, and hid behind the brush. I was afraid that they would sense my presence, so I dared not to get too close. From afar, I could see Kasim and the wolves fighting and hissing. I couldn't hear what they were saying because of the distance, but I vaguely heard Mia's name as well as mine and my brother. "Kasim, this must be another one of your traps. You're really unscrupulous." I suddenly wondered if Mia would understand that we wouldn't target Kasim for no reason if she saw this scene. I also wanted her to know that Kasim wouldn't treat her well for no reason. But I found myself hesitating. I was blaming Kasim, but what we wanted was not much different from him. I quickly ran over and asked Mia to follow me to take a look at this scene. Mia didn't know what was happening, but she followed behind me and ran behind the boulder. Of course, she saw Kasim talking to others while fighting, but before she could hear clearly, Kasim had already beaten away a few wolves and was being chased by the remaining wolves. God damn it, this kid beat me to it again. I had no choice but to continue running with Mia in the woods. The three of us, wolves, ran in front, followed by a pack. "Wait, shouldn't we beat them away first?" I suddenly stopped and looked back at Kasim. The brat was covered in blood. I didn't know if it was his blood or if it belonged to the other. I couldn't care less. I pounced forward and slapped the alpha wolf in the lead. They probably didn't expect me to suddenly step in. Before they could react, I slapped them away. I looked up at the sky and screamed, "For my Luna, I will not let any one of you come close." Learning from my previous lesson, I wouldn't be so careless this time. Kasim tried to bring Mia away when Mia shouted, "No, Kasim, I can't leave without him." The wolves this time were clearly different from the last time. Their combat strength was obviously slightly weaker. I took the opportunity to bite the alpha's neck and flung him to the side. Immediately, a long wound was torn open on his neck, and blood came gushing out. The other wolves were stunned by this scene. I walked forward, step by step, and they retreated step by step. I growled, if you don't want me to tear you apart, get lost immediately, or all of you will be held accountable. The wolves clearly looked terrified. They looked at the fallen alpha and then at me. I gave a cold laugh. I, Willard, am not someone you can defeat just because you want to do. You want to get a taste of my sharp claws. I had a fearsome reputation in all the packs for my combat strength. They thought that I was a pushover because my older brother would take care of everything for me. But in fact, even my brother would take me seriously in a fight. Never mind a bunch of lowlife like them. The remaining wolves looked at the alpha and wanted to rush forward to save him. I growled and pounced again, stepping hard on the alpha. The alpha had lost too much blood and was already lying on the ground, unable to move. As a wolf pack, there would always be a candidate for the alpha. I wouldn't give him a chance. I had to suppress them as soon as possible, so I bit him again. He suddenly let out a cry in distress, and I tore at him hard. Blood splattered from the wounds on his body. Then I tore out his throat. The other wolves howled in fear and backed away. Their gazes turned to another wolf. I knew it was their beta. Without hesitation, I lunged at the wolf. He jumped to meet me, but I slapped him on the head again with a thud. They really didn't learn I was injured last time because of my negligence, coupled with the fact that I was outnumbered. This time, a few of them had already been taken care of by Kayarsim. What was left of them was no longer a threat to me. After getting rid of them, the three of us kept going. The jungle road got rougher and rougher. Kasim and Mia held the treasure map as we looked for the right direction. According to the map, we should be near the treasure, but we just couldn't find it. The road sign was really weird as it grew dark. We had to find the entrance to the treasure as soon as possible, or we'd have to spend the night in the jungle, which was not a very nice thing to do because we didn't have a tent with us. Chapter 44, Temple of the Moon Goddess. Willard was always so meticulous. He led the way for us, while Kasim and I followed behind. We had to find the entrance to the treasure as soon as possible. Otherwise, tonight would be a big problem. What made me feel strange was that we couldn't find the entrance when the sign on the map clearly indicated that we were near the treasure. I found it hard to understand. Kasim became very serious. He followed beside me as he held my hand. He comforted me softly. Mia, don't be afraid. I got you. His voice was still as delicate as ever. Like a child, if I hadn't seen him fighting with the hungry wolves, I wouldn't have believed that he was that powerful. Alpha. I smiled and patted his hand. Okay, don't worry, Willard will take care of everything. He pouted. Mia, you only trust Willard and never trust me. I was surprised. Where does this come from? Willard has always been the most careful person. Willard said, without turning around, stop talking, let's hurry up, or we'll have to camp in the jungle. He was always attentive and considerate, but I could clearly hear the displeasure in Willard's voice. I didn't want to get under his skin. Soon, we discovered that we were actually in the location of the treasure. It was just we were taken in circles because we couldn't find the entrance. What am I supposed to do? Suddenly, my knees buckled. I felt like I'd stepped into a hole. I missed my footing and fell. I screamed. What is this? What's going on? Why are there traps over here? The moment I fell, Willard and Kasim exclaimed, Mia, oh my goddess, what's this then? The three of us fell into a pit. I didn't expect there to be a trap in the woods. I landed first, followed by Kasim, then Willard. I didn't have time to dodge out of the way, but Willard desperately twisted his body and landed beside me. I was really touched. I couldn't believe he would put my safety before his in such a critical situation by changing his landing posture so quickly. But because he did it too fast, he sprained his muscles. He held his waist and groaned in distress. He slowly stood up. It seemed that He was hurt pretty badly. I quickly helped him up and checked his injuries while looking around me. Is this a trap? The cave was pitch black, and I couldn't see anything clearly. Kasim had already gotten up and taken out the lighter on him. In the faint light, we saw that we were in an underground cave. There was a wooden stick inserted into the bare stone wall. Turned out this was an extinguished torch. I wondered if this was the place we had been looking for. The three of us looked at each other and saw surprise in each other's eyes, not knowing what was going on. Kasim took down the torch on the wall. Willard tore a piece of cloth from his clothes and tangled the wood and lit it with a lighter. It was much brighter now. We continued forward and were pleasantly surprised to find that there were more torches on the stone wall of the underground cave at a distance. Willard lit those torches. Soon, the cave was brightly lit. Gradually, we became adapted to the light. We could see murals carved into the wall. Maybe this was where the treasure was kept. The three of us looked at each other and saw surprise in each other's eyes. We finally found the treasure. The place we were at was a huge pit. The entrance was right above the pit. At this moment, the sky outside had already darkened and we could vaguely see the moonlight outside. The mural carved on the stone walls of the cave was actually the story of the moon goddess. We were exhilarated. We wondered if this was the legendary temple of the moon goddess. But why is it underground? What on earth had happened here over the past centuries? The walls of the entire cave were filled with murals. We looked at them one by one. The cave was deep and spacious on our way. As more torches were lit, the cave became brighter and brighter. It was a huge sculpture. I couldn't help but go forward and touch it. I wondered if this was the moon goddess. Her clothes were exquisitely carved. Her long gauze dress fell to the ground. The moonlight shone through the entrance and illuminated her statue. Her cheeks were smooth and her features were beautiful. On the stone seat of the statue, there was a scepter and a crown. I couldn't help but exclaim that this was really the temple of the moon goddess. Kasim and Willard were also shocked by the scene in front of them. Their gazes stopped on the moon goddess's face. They looked at us with pity. I was deeply attracted to the moon goddess's scepter and crown. They emitted endless magic to lure me in. This was what I dreamed of seeing. I worshipped the moon goddess and yearned for a blessing to have endless power to save my clansmen who were suffering. Moon goddess, I finally found you. The moon pendant around my neck emitted a white light, illuminating the entire cave. The moon goddess stone statue in front of me became as lucid as white jade. She looked at us from above, seemingly eager to talk to us. Willard and Kasim were also stunned by this scene. My moon pendant seemed to be filled with vitality and actually floated in front of my chest as if it was guiding me. I couldn't help but move forward and pick up the scepter. The scepter emitted a silver light in my hand, illuminating the entire space like moonlight. My next move surprised me. I picked up the crown and put it on my head. Moon goddess, please forgive me for my impertinence. However, I believed that it was the guiding force that made me wear the crown. The moment the crown was placed on my head, the scepter, crown, and moon pendant fused into one. My entire body emitted a white light from head to toe. The gentle moonlight from the entrance shone on my body. As it fused with the white light on my body, my mind suddenly buzzed. I seemed to remember something. I looked up at the sky outside the entrance and happened to see the bright moon in the sky. I seemed to have thought of a lot. I finally remembered why I had been seen as a jinx since I was born. It was because I came to this world with a mission. My life was destined to be different. Chapter 45, Blessings and Curses. Hundreds of years ago, a series of events happened to the lichen packs that resulted in changes. When they begged for power, they experienced countless difficulties and dangers. Every species had the right to evolution. The sun god and I gave them the ability to evolve, and I, the moon goddess, became the guardian of their worship. They promised me that they would not be enemies with humans, be friendly with the packs for generations, and not do anything to harm their people. Everyone would live together in their respective territories and maintain the prosperity of all packs. However, Station Z, weeks later, as technology developed, the Lycan leaders were gradually consumed by greed. They forgot their original intention and began to do all kinds of things to hurt other Lycan for the sake of power and wealth. And their various despicable actions finally got in the way of the interests of all Lycan, causing the most innocent and most powerless among them to fight for survival. Therefore, the sun god punished them. Their world was about to restart for the sins they had brought to this world. I couldn't bear for them to disappear like this, so I gave them a chance to make things right. The way to solve this problem was to repair the mistakes they had made in the past for the next 100 years. In the end, they would find the reincarnation of the moon goddess and use the children she gave birth to change the genes of their race. By then, they would lead all the packs to a more prosperous future. And I realized that I was in fact the reincarnation of the moon goddess. I suddenly understood a lot. As I was the reincarnation of the moon goddess, I was the person who could bring them light. I was also the person everyone wanted to make use of, the children I gave birth to. And even their descendants could carry on the existence of the Lycan. I raised my hand to receive the moonlight. This moonlight turned my hand transparent and sparkling. However, I felt extremely bitter. It turned out that they were all in on it from the very beginning. They were interested in me for their packs. It was not because they liked me and fell in love with me. The moonlight became incredibly bright, and the gemstones on the scepter turned vivid red. The ground suddenly shook, and then shook for a while, causing the entrance to collapse. A large amount of sand, stones, and earth fell down. Willard shouted. Watch out, he had already transformed into a giant wolf to protect me. At the same time, Kasim also transformed into a giant wolf to block those rocks. The temple was completely exposed, and wolf howls could be heard from all directions. Due to the awakening of the moon goddess and my divine sense, the moonlight on my body attracted countless wolves. After the earthquake stopped, we saw hordes of wolves surrounding the outside of the cave. They glared at us as if they wanted to tear us apart. At this moment, I was close to being disenchanted. I no longer wanted to be the so-called moon goddess. I only wanted to be myself. The alpha of the wild wolves was a huge black wolf. His eyes glowed a ghostly green, and he looked at us as if we were prey. He ran his tongue across the tip of his nose. I could even see his mouth watering. He probably wanted to tear us apart now. The appearance of the moon goddess was a temptation for everyone. The alpha said in a human voice, "Hey, moon goddess, can you stay here tonight?" His voice was casual and filled with infinite malice. What is he going to do to me, however? I actually hoped that he would tear me apart so that I would no longer be the moon goddess. I just wanted to be Mia. The alpha clearly did not want to wait. Its goal was to control me. I knew that if these packs lost, it would give all of them a chance to develop again. Perhaps the wild wolves could replace them and become a new Lycan pack. As for the other packs, they would also disappear with the battle. The alpha wolf suddenly pounced at me. I didn't want to resist. I didn't want to be used by others again, nor did I want to protect any packs. I gave up, waiting to be killed. I just wanted to end my miserable life like this. But at this moment, two giant wolves rushed past me. They were Kasim and Willard. They appeared in front of me. Willard shouted at me, "Mia, are you insane? Get out of here." No. The two of them did not dare to advance rashly. There were too many of them. We slowly retreated and gradually leaned against the base of the stone statue. Kasim and Willard stood in front of me to protect me, afraid that they would hurt me. The Alpha sneered at us. My dear moon goddess, why don't you come with me? Why defend these despicable people? Why should you shine on them instead of us? We're also your people. I didn't answer. He continued to move forward. Finally, Kasim couldn't take it anymore. He was agile and rushed out. He pounced on the alpha wolf to end this battle as soon as possible. He had to capture the leader first. As long as he defeated the alpha wolf, the other wolves would naturally retreat. It could also serve as a deterrent. However, when he pounced over and before his claws could hit the alpha wolf, two wolves had already rushed out from the side and stopped him. These two wolves were clearly much larger than Kasim. Kasim nimbly dodged them, jumping and moving to avoid these two wolves. He raised his sharp claws at the alpha wolf shining with a cold light under the moonlight. However, it was obvious that he was outnumbered. Two more wolves pounced on him. Willard could not watch as Kasim was torn apart by them. He left my side and rushed over again to join the chaotic battle. Kasim kept retreating when he fell at my feet. His body was already covered in blood. Willard couldn't afford to waste any more time. He shouted at me to take care of him and then beat away the wolf that pounced on him. Willard was one of the best in the packs. Not many people could defeat him, but the three of us had to confront a whole pack of wolves. Kasim was also seriously injured. What should I do? Looking at the blood and wounds on his body, I was finally pulled back to reality from my wild imagination. I picked up Kasim and kept healing his wounds, but for some reason, my head was spinning and the healing power wouldn't work. Kasim, wake up. Kasim. However, he no longer had the strength to change back into his human form. His energy was constantly depleting and could not support his transformation. Willard quickly gained the upper hand, but it did not last long. He began to feel out of his depth, and more wolves surrounded him. At that moment, there were a few roars in the distance. 3 more giant wolves rushed over. They must have heard the earthquake and the battle over here. I saw that the ones running the fastest in the lead were Krell and Locust. Simon followed closely behind. At this moment, they were in the form of 3 giant wolves and quickly rushed into the team. Willard's crisis was relieved, and the 4 of them quickly gained the upper hand. They were among the few people with the strongest attack power in the packs. Their joint attack forced the wild wolves to retreat repeatedly. However, it didn't last long either, because they were outnumbered. A wild wolf suddenly slapped at Willard's back. At this moment, Willard was attacking the 4 people surrounding Krell. He was unable to defend his back at all. Chapter 46, Fighting a Losing Battle. Krell shouted at Willard to be careful. The next moment, he stood behind Willard and was slammed with a claw heavily on his back. Krell was knocked to the ground. Then a few wild wolves took the opportunity to pounce on him and bite his shoulder, back, and throat. Willard was shocked. He hurriedly rushed over and knocked away the wolf. Lucas also hissed at Willard, "Willard, take care of your brother. We'll take care of these people." However, the current situation was even more critical. Although Simon and Lucas were not weak, it was simply too difficult for the 2 of them to deal with so many wild wolves. With Kasim heavily injured, it was impossible for him to return to his human form, let alone fight. Willard hugged his brother and shouted Krell's name. His entire body was covered in blood. His neck had been severely bitten open, and several pieces of flesh on his shoulder and back had been torn off. It looked like a disaster. They were both in human form, and Willard was already hugging his brother and crying. "Hello, my brother. You have to be all right. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have disobeyed you and let them go. If I hadn't betrayed you, this wouldn't have happened between us. If there were any problems, we could solve them together. It's all my fault." Krell forced his eyes open and licked his hand. He said in a low voice, Don't be sad, Willard. I'm your brother. No matter what happens, I need to look out for you. I know it was my fault in the past. I always treated you as a child, but I hope that you can be safe and happy under my protection. I don't want you to be in any danger. Willard nodded vigorously. Krell, I know that it's my fault. I've admired you since I was young. In my heart, you're my hero. I've always looked up to you and seen you as a role model. I hope that one day I can be like you. I can take care of everything in the entire pack and shelter the entire pack, but I can't. I want to be as independent as an adult, but I also want to rely on you, brother. Please forgive me. Stay with me. We'll get through this. Krill's eyes revealed a rare trace of affection. I even detected a smile. Silly boy, why would I care about this? I hate betrayal, but not from you. You're my brother. I hate you for letting him go, but I'm more worried about you and her. As he spoke, he raised his head and glanced at me. Willard nodded repeatedly. Although I let them go, I was also worried about her safety. I'm afraid that Cassium will hurt her again. She's such an innocent and silly girl. Cassium has set up traps everywhere, so I can't bear to see her fall for it again. That's why I followed them out here, brother. Please forgive me. I know you like her, but I'm sorry, brother. I fell in love with her, too. Kirill finally said to me, Mia, I know I've put you in a difficult position. We're late and I can't protect you anymore. You must be happy now. Choose you're about to get rid of me, but Mia, you have to believe that I love you. But for some reason, my head hurt more and more. While they were talking, the situation became more and more against us. Locus and Simon were also injured and bleeding. They were retreating step by step at this moment. Someone suddenly pounced on me. Of course, they knew that, as long as they caught me, all the problems would be solved. Willard could not care about anything else. He shifted back into his wolf form and jumped over and pressed me to the ground, protecting me with his body. The black wolf missed, but Willard was also hit on the back. He groaned in pain and fell to the ground, rolling in his wolf form. He protected Krell and me behind him. Cassium had already recovered a little of his strength. He stood up with difficulty and still stood in front of me. He said to me, Mia, take care of yourself. Then he blocked the wolf that was pouncing at me. Krell was lying on the ground. He shifted back into his wolf, but was too weak to fight. I couldn't help but pick him up and kiss his forehead. Krell, hang in there for me. You haven't given me a cake yet. This was what he had promised me in the past. He knew that I liked sweet food and wanted me to eat whatever I wanted. His neck was torn open and blood was flowing from the long wound, dyeing his fur red. Krell's wolf head hung in my lap. He looked extremely weak. He reminded me of how Willard looked like he was seriously injured. I couldn't imagine the consequences. I no longer had the ability to heal him, and Kasim was also seriously injured. What should I do? I clutched him to me. Krell, don't you know how much I need you? Although you're always so arrogant, I only feel at ease when you're around. I admit that I've always been too soft-hearted and can't even say no to you. But do you know that I'm already used to being pampered and protected by you? My head was killing me. My tears fell on his face. I wanted to press my hand against his wound to stop his bleeding, but it didn't work at all. Krell, can you forgive me? I promise I will be a good girl. If you can be all right, I'll stay by your side. Okay? Krell's eyes seemed to light up. He rubbed his wolf head against my chest and revealed a trace of satisfaction. I just heard that you can't go back on your word. My Mia, I wish things would have been different. I did all this for you. I had only left him for a day, and now we were already facing a life and death situation. Just now, I had hated him for using me. Now, at this moment, I realized that in the depths of my heart, I already couldn't live without him. While I was still panicking, Kasim was also sent flying and fell beside him. That cute little boy was covered in blood and lying on the ground while blinking at me. "You have to take care of yourself, Mia," as he said that he actually closed his eyes. Oh my God, his body is torn and tattered and blood is flowing profusely. What should I do? What should I do to heal them? I didn't have the energy or time to think about this. Then Willard and Lucas were beaten out. Oh my God, they are all seriously injured. What should I do? But even so, they were still trying their best to stand in front of me to protect me. Only the blood-soaked Simon was still trying his best to fight with the alpha wolf. But soon after, Simon was also thrown out by the alpha. He fell heavily in front of me, not even having time to say a word to me. What should I do? I didn't even have the strength to lift my eyelids to take a look. I felt pain all over and couldn't think straight. The wolf leader slowly walked toward me and gave a cold laugh. "My honorable moon goddess, I suppose. Now you can consider making our packs stronger, right? Look at them. They're all leaders of other packs, but now they have to beg for my mercy. They've done so many bad things in the past and want to use their descendants to make up for this mistake. Do we have to be destroyed? Do we have to live in the shadows since you want to punish them? You shouldn't give them a chance. And what did we do wrong? For thousands of years, you've been treating us like shit." I knew that back then the wild wolves committed even greater crimes. That was why I had granted the other packs' development and denied theirs. However, the wild wolves had never shown any signs of repentance. They had always been waiting for the right time to strike and take over. At this moment, there were all kinds of situations in those packs. That was why the sun god and I decided to punish them. The good thing was their alpha was constantly correcting their mistakes later on and letting their descendants make up for their mistakes. That was why they got to survive and develop. However, once the curse and punishment were formed, they needed to be broken. I was the key part in breaking this curse. Now they were all lying at my feet. I needed to heal them and repel the wolves. Otherwise, this would be the rise of the wild wolves and the end of other packs. With this in mind, I became even more anxious. I had to figure out a way. I couldn't watch them die. Like this. Chapter 47, Fully Restored. Suddenly, a coolness flowed from the top of my head to my whole body. The crown on my head let out a low hum. I instinctively thought of the scepter. I pounced on the ground, not far away, and my fingers touched the scepter that had fallen to the ground. I gripped the scepter tightly. A weak force circulated around my fingertips, guiding my arm and raising it high up to the bright moon. My headache instantly disappeared, and a long, strange line of words appeared in my mind. It was the incantation of the ancient gods. In an instant, the scepter emitted a myriad of rays of light and the brilliance of the moon constantly merging together. The entire sky was illuminated by silver light. The silver moonlight drifted down and wrapped everyone in it. Stars from the scepter scattered around like flowing water, also enveloping the 5 men beside me and falling on them. The magic from the scepter made them recover quickly. The moonlight shone on their bodies. The blood on their bodies began to fall, and their wounds began to heal. At this moment, the clothes on my body also changed into the dress on the statue. I had completely returned to my original form. I was the moon goddess. I waved my scepter and pointed it at the alpha of the wild wolves. He was pressed to the ground by the power of the moon goddess and did not dare to raise his head. I said coldly, "I punished you because what you did previously was sinful and unforgivable. Although they were at fault, their crimes did not deserve death. Moreover, their ancestors themselves and their descendants are all working hard to correct the mistakes they made back then. However, you are different. You have been reproducing your forces in the shadows and trying to destroy the balance of this world. This is something I cannot tolerate. Therefore, the punishment for you is that you can only exist as wild wolves and cannot become a new race to replace them. Otherwise, the entire wolf race will be doomed. The alpha wanted to explain, but my divine sense told me that he had no intention of repenting. He was just trying to stall for time, I sneered. You want to take advantage of the fact that my divine sense is still in the early stages of awakening and that my magic power is not strong enough to attack you, right? You can give it a try. The alpha's eyes flashed with a fierce, dark green light. I had hit the nail on the head. When I put on the crown, my divine sense began to awaken and attract them over. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that I was in the early stages of my divine sense awakening and that my magic power had not yet recovered. They wanted to take the opportunity to control me to achieve their goal. However, they had miscalculated. I would not give them such a chance. Krill and the others had returned to normal under my moonlight. At this moment, they were still in the form of 5 giant wolves beside me. They growled at the alpha, warning him not to try to challenge their power. At this moment, I actually didn't need their help. With my divine power, even if their packs all appeared in front of me, it would only be a matter of raising my hands. The moon goddess's magic and divine power would always be unimaginable to them. The alpha was tempted and wanted to give it a try. Krell growled and rushed out. I waved my scepter to stop him. Krell, I'll come back. The light emitted by the scepter was like an invisible rope that bound him and pulled him to my side. However, they seemed to have a tacit understanding and fanned forward, approaching the wild wolves step by step under my divine light. The wild wolves kept retreating. I could clearly see that his hair was standing on end and that he was filled with fear. I tapped his head lightly with my scepter and said with a smile, I have given you a chance to exist in this world, but you have to remember that you do not exist to challenge others. As long as you don't continue to do evil and harm others, I won't deal with you. However, if you do anything to harm others, I will also punish your wild wolves. At that time, your outcome might be even worse than theirs. They spent 100 years making up for the mistakes their ancestors made. What are you going to do? You can think about it. The alpha didn't give up. He pounced on me. Fortunately, with the moon goddess's power, no one could get close to me. I didn't even have to lift my arm. The scepter let out a dazzling light that was like a barrier. The alpha hit on it and bounced back, landing heavily on the ground. The gemstone on the scepter flashed after the red light floated past. It wrapped around him like a long whip and flung him out. The alpha slammed heavily into the mountain rock and let out a low cry. He was so out of his league. Did he think that he could challenge the moon goddess casually? He should not forget that I was the patron god of all lichens, challenging my divine power, dream. I looked at the moon in the sky and raised my scepter high. The light from the scepter and the moon intertwined and shuttled back and forth. My voice also became ethereal. I now curse you in the name of the moon goddess. In the next wave years, the wild wolves will face hunger, distress, and pursuit. Their descendants need to complete sex tasks that benefit lichens every year in these jewel years to remove this curse. Otherwise, wade years later, the wild wolves will completely disappear from lichens and have no chance of evolving. The wolves let out low cries. They clearly couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. I smiled. This is a chance for you to change. You've always been enemies with the other pack. You know how many wolves you've harmed? I don't want to say more. I'll tell you with the mercy of the moon goddess. As long as you're willing to repent and make up for it, you can still survive in this world. I won't kill all of you, but I also won't let you continue with the wrongdoing. The alpha still wanted to attack me, but before he could get close, he was pushed back by my barrier. After trying 3 times this way, he finally gave up. I pointed my scepter at him and sent out a beam of divine light. Well, you can stop being the alpha now. I suggest that you immediately select a new alpha. Otherwise, your time might be shortened. The wolves were shocked by this scene. Finally, a huge gray wolf slowly walked out of that. This was the beta of the pack. He bent his knees to me and bowed. He said in a low and respectful voice, "Honorable moon goddess, I beg you to spare our pack. We will make up for our mistakes according to your instructions. Please forgive us this time. I beg you to forgive our ignorance." I didn't want to bother too much with them. The wild wolves lived in the dark to balance and restrain the other forces. If they disappeared, the other packs would have no scruples, so I was just giving them a light punishment and letting them know to restrain themselves. I waved my hand, and the gray wolf gave me another respectful bow. Then, with a long hiss, he led all the wolves away into the distance. The previous alpha was taken with them. In the darkness, I could still hear their voices running farther and farther away. Their roars kept coming. Okay, it was all over. Chapter 48. Back home again. I retracted my scepter and my true body returned to my usual appearance. Krell and the others had returned to their human forms and stood beside me. I felt extremely tired. These people were just trying to use me. I suddenly felt extremely disappointed and disgusted with them. Krell had already stepped forward and grabbed me. Mia, listen to me. I interrupted him. Listen to what I don't want to listen to any of your explanation. I've had enough. You're all the same. No matter what your motives are, no matter how you appear to me or approach me, your purpose is the same. You just want to use me to help your pack. I'm very disappointed. I don't want to have any more dealings with you. Today's matter ends here. I'm no longer the moon goddess. I'm only Maya, that ordinary woman. I took off the crown, and the moment I took it off, the light on my body was attracted into it. Just as the light on my body was about to completely disappear, I picked up the scepter and threw it hard at the statue. The scepter landed in the hand of the statue with a poof. The stone statue's hand made cracking sounds as the stone spread towards the scepter and quickly enveloped it. The light between the scepter and the moon was cut off. I didn't want to be the person they wanted to use. The ground was shaking, and this place was going to have another earthquake. Carol had already grabbed me and run out quickly, shouting, "Oh my goodness, what have you done? You can stop being the moon goddess, but you should not cause an earthquake. We'll all die." Then they turned into wolves and ran wildly into the distance with me in their mouths. The mountain behind us collapsed and buried the cave. This was good. In this case, this place would be sealed. No one knew what would happen in the future. The so-called treasure was also buried below. No one would know. We quickly avoided the collapsed area. When we looked back, the rocks and trees had already been razed to the ground. It was as if nothing had happened. The moon was still shining brightly in the sky, and everything was over. I looked at Krill, Lolkes, and the rest of them. They looked at me with sincerity. I couldn't help but sneer. You don't have to pretend anymore. What's the point? They still wanted to explain, but I didn't want to give them any more chances. I turned quickly and ran outside. I wanted to get rid of them. I never wanted to see them again. When I returned to the clinic, I had a feeling that everything was different. It was all like a dream. In just a few days, so many things had happened and changed so much. I looked at the empty clinic. It was full of equipment. I even wondered if what had happened before was real. However, those memories were really engraved in my mind. Now that I no longer had the power of the moon goddess, I was just an ordinary girl. I continued to run my clinic and continue my aspirations, but I didn't want to stay in this place anymore. I touched the equipment that Simon had prepared for me before. Looking at the place that had been set up, I had mixed feelings. Well, forget about this. I decided to find a new place and posted a suspension notice outside the clinic. I began to pack up and prepare to take away what belonged to me anyway. I saved some money during this period of time. The equipment would not be a problem if I moved to another place to continue. I could do something even if I could not do anything great. I could still accumulate everything slowly and find a new place to reopen a clinic. I didn't hide this from Safia. She was my best friend. I felt I had to admit these things to her. Although I felt very apologetic to her because I knew that Lucas had always been her crush. I also clearly knew that I should give her an explanation since my relationship with Lucas was getting closer and closer. Therefore, I simply told her about the expedition, including what happened between Lucas and me. At first, Safia was very depressed. Then she wrapped her arms around my waist and buried her head in my arm. She choked and said, "Mia, don't blame yourself, actually. I have long known that Lucas likes you, but I hoped that he would fall in love with me." I told myself more than once that this matter could not be forced, all right? Mia, don't be sad and don't think too much on it. We're best friends. Let's leave this matter to time. With the help of Safia, I started looking for a house so that I could move out at any time. So I was going to pack my things in advance and take away all my memories. These days they called me and came to the clinic. I just wanted to start my life again and forget everything that had happened. The door suddenly opened, and the moment I turned around, someone hugged me from behind. I was startled and tried to struggle, but a familiar voice whispered in my ear, "Mia, don't go. Okay, please." It was Simon. I struggled with all my might, but he held me so tightly in his arms that I couldn't turn back. He had never treated me like this before. He hugged me tightly and buried his head in my neck. His voice was choked with sobs. He was in such a state that I had never thought of or seen. He kissed the back of my neck and said in a low voice, "Mia, please believe me. I know you hold a grudge against me and feel that we are all cheating you and using you." But Mia, think about it carefully. Can't you feel any of my sincerity for you? I admit I had a purpose when I approached you from the beginning. But my heart is not made of iron. I fell in love with you. I want to be by your side. Whether you're an ordinary girl or the moon goddess, you're the same to me. Don't leave. Okay. I violently broke free from his hold and turned around. After not seeing him for a few days, he had become much more haggard. The edges of his face were even more distinct, and he had even grown stubble, looking extremely disheveled. He looked at me like that, and his eyes revealed pain and sorrow. He held my face and kissed my forehead. He said hoarsely, "Mia, don't be angry. Forgive me. Nothing I say might be able to make up for the scars in your heart. But Mia, please believe me. I really love you. You please stay." I glared at him. "How did you know I was leaving?" Simon shrugged helplessly. "Silly girl, the house you just found is also mine. Don't you know how many properties we have? Don't you know how many properties I have outside?" I was impressed. I really didn't know how many properties he had outside. I ignored that every pack had enough resources. I didn't expect to be back in his place after so many days of work. Simon suddenly kissed me on the lips. "Listen to me, good girl. Forgive me, okay? It is not as convenient as here. If you go out again, you don't have to find a place. Isn't this good? Let's start over. Okay, give me a chance, and we can start all over again." Chapter 49. Enough is enough. Could we really start over bullshit? I tried to break free from his embrace, but Simon's arms were so strong that I couldn't break free. His lips were so warm, he was still kissing me. He bit my lips and stuck his tongue into my mouth. I gradually let my guard down. His gentleness was like the spring breeze, which was melting me. I even began to respond. His hand had already reached into my clothes and caressed my back. I felt really hot, and he had already unbuttoned my bra. Maya, can we start over? Give me a chance. I don't want to lose you. He kept repeating that sentence in my ear. My eartobe was in his mouth. My last rationality made me want to push him away, forcefully. But I felt really weak at that time. I failed to push him away. I shouted, "No, I don't want to see any of you." Somehow, I started crying. I had to admit that I was kind of unfaithful. I was greedy for them to pamper and protect me, but I didn't want to be their plaything or tool. However, when everything from the past surfaced again, I wrapped my arms around his neck. Simon licked my tears, then my eyelids and the tip of my nose under his guidance. I touched his chest. It was firm and broad. This sense of security made me relax. I bit gently and ran the tip of my tongue across it. His body smelled of hormone. His hand paused for a moment before he pressed me onto the table, as if he had received some kind of signal. His hand reached into my clothes again without hesitation. This time he grabbed my breasts and whispered in my ear, "Can I be an exception? You can choose not to see them, but you have to think about how good I am to you, right? All right, let's leave all that in the past. We're going to start over now." He bit open my buttons and licked my breasts. The heat of his tongue made my body tremble involuntarily. I felt that I was turned on. I wanted to push his shoulders away, but I hugged him hard. Everything from the past flashed through my mind. He always took care of everything for me, meticulously. He would appear by my side when I needed him and solve my problems. I had also been obsessed with his warmth, but I couldn't help but let out a cry. He had actually reached his hand into my skirt and touched between my legs. "Stop, Simon. Don't be in such a hurry." I was making my final struggle, but I could clearly feel that something was flowing out of me. It was incredibly embarrassing. How could I have such a reaction to each of them? Just as I was about to jump off the table, his head suddenly got closer to me, and Simon started licking me again. I couldn't help but want to clamp my legs together, but my body was already limp and powerless. I fell onto the table. His hand had already touched my chest. I was totally turned on. I was powerless to resist. "Simon? Simon," I called his name. "Mia, can I take you now?" What the hell did he want me to say that out loud? I humped as consent in shame. And then he just plunged deep inside of me. The things on the table were scattered all over the floor, but he was not satisfied. He picked me up, and I could only hook around his body with my legs. He hugged me closer. Every move went straight deep into my body, making me cry uncontrollably. My breasts rubbed against his chest, which made me unable to extricate myself from it. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. It seemed that he felt encouraged, so he laid me down on the carpet. I groaned. I felt totally stuffed by him. I knew very well that we were mates too. His big cock only brought me pleasure, which kept turning me on until he came inside of me. I actually enjoyed the pleasure Simon gave me so much. The door suddenly opened downstairs, and Locus's voice came at the wrong time. "Mia, look what I brought you." Shit. The two of us seemed to be frozen at that time. We were going to be caught by Locus. Bang, the door was knocked open, followed by the sound of something falling to the ground and shattering. I looked up and saw Locus looking at us in shock. "Simon, you bastard. We agreed on fair competition, but you are actually doing this. I'm going to kill you." Locust had already transformed into a giant wolf and then pounced at Simon. Simon had already withdrawn from my body and quickly shifted while he dodged Locust's attack. The room was narrow, so how could it withstand the battle between the two giant wolves? I had no choice but to jump between them and separate them. Enough. What are you guys doing? Locust looked at us. He was disheveled, and his face was filled with sorrow. Mia, have you decided to give up on me? I quickly tidied up my clothes. This was too embarrassing. However, when I went downstairs angrily, I saw Corell standing at the door. When I met his gaze, I felt even more embarrassed. Did these bastards make an appointment? One wanted to see the scene, and this one was blocking the way downstairs. I wailed, enough. I don't want to see any of you. I transformed and rushed out of the clinic. I was physically and mentally exhausted. All I wanted to do now was return to my own residence and stay away from these people. What the hell did they want from me? What should I do? I shook my head hard. I wanted to shake them out of my mind, but I couldn't forget any of them. I couldn't choose any of them either. Krilo, Locust, Simon, Willard, or even Kasim, that bad boy. However, when I thought of them, I would recall everything I had experienced in the forest. My heart skipped a beat. They were all using me. Even behind Kasim's harmless face, he had all kinds of tricks. He had set me up, attracted my attention, took advantage of my trust and sympathy, and then marked me. But now I clearly knew that he was also my mate, so I couldn't resist. Oh my God. What should I do now? I closed the door. The moment I wanted to turn on the light, I suddenly touched a hand of someone else. I screamed in fear. Then I heard a sinister voice. My good daughter, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Oh my goddess, it was my foster father. When did he come here? I didn't even notice him. I couldn't even feel where he was. I wanted to hide to the side, but I bumped into someone. My foster father hugged me tightly from behind and rubbed my breasts with both hands. I felt extremely disgusted and wanted to break free. He was breathing beside my ear, which made me feel very sick. Chapter 50 Dreams do come true. Oh, my good daughter, since you refuse to come home, I am forced to come to you. Your smell has changed. Have you already had sex with some other guy? Do you want to try it with me now? You might think I'm better than them. I struggled to break free, but I was no match for him. As he tore my clothes apart, the door was kicked open. Then the lights were turned on. Krell was standing in the doorway. His hand had already turned into a wolf claw. He pointed at my foster father and said coldly, "Get lost immediately, or I'll definitely rip your throat out. If you don't believe me, you can try me." My foster father was clearly frightened. His grip on me loosened a lot. Carol reached out to me. I threw myself into his arms. Creel held me tightly in his arms with one hand. His wolf claw was shining under the light. He suddenly swung at my foster father. My foster father hurriedly dodged him, but because the room was too small, my foster father was still injured. There was a long wound on his chest, and blood flowed out. As he jumped in pain, he scolded, "You bitch. Do you think I can't smell it? You are marked by more than one man. I will come back for you with that." He transformed and rushed out. Krell ignored him and let him go. Krell didn't really want to kill my foster father. I shivered in his arms. Krell gently comforted me and patted my back. "All right, Mia, you are safe now. I will be protecting you. I was worried that something would happen to you, so I've been following you. Don't worry, I am here for you." This place was no longer habitable as he got someone to fix the door. He stayed by my side and carefully took care of me. He was always so considerate and protected me silently. I felt really confused. What should I do? However, the fear of my foster father never disappeared. Karel held my face and said, Mia, I'll accompany you tonight so that he won't harass you again. I promise you that I won't touch you if you don't agree. Is that okay? After hesitating for a while, I finally nodded and let him stay. I kept waking up that night. My foster father had really scared me. Coupled with what had happened these past few days, I became more and more sensitive. Even if there was a slight sound, I would be woken up. Karel finally could not help but lie down beside me. He gently pulled me into his arms and said, gently, Mia, don't worry. I'll always be by your side. Nothing will happen to you. I couldn't help but tremble in his arms. His warm embrace gradually made me feel at ease and even addicted. What should I do? Karel kissed my forehead and hugged me. All right, you can sleep now. Don't worry about those things anymore. No matter what, you have to remember that I'm always by your side. I finally admitted that I was intoxicated by his gentleness. I hugged him tightly. His chest was firm and the heat coming from his skin was so hot as if it would melt me. He gently bit my earlobe and said, Mia, I think we're mates too. My heart was racing again. This feeling was so familiar that I couldn't help but want to kiss him. Why was this happening? I actually had so many mates. This feeling was clearly something between mates. He bit my collarbone. Mia, my Mia, you're driving me crazy. Oh my goddess, was I really a bad girl? Why couldn't I reject his gentleness or his love? I could even feel that he was going to take me. But I couldn't help but lie flat. He gently plunged inside of me and started moving. The pleasure that came from it made me totally high. I hugged him tightly. Karel, you are so amazing. Perhaps because of the fatigue after sex, I fell into a deep sleep in his arms very soon. In my dream, I was surrounded by 5 giant wolves. They were strong, soft, and gentle. They were also cute from time to time. They rubbed against me, which made me want to keep them by my side and enjoy the feeling of being protected and pampered. What did this mean? The next day, when we appeared at the door of the clinic, I was shocked by what I saw. Everything in the clinic had been cleaned up. Simon was brewing coffee. Kasim was preparing a dessert table, and Lucas and Willard were at the side saying something. The places that had been messed up previously were also neatly cleaned up. I couldn't help but be stunned. What was going on? Why were the 4 of them here at the same time? Seeing Karel and me, they all looked surprised. Lucas even sniffed. Then he let out a strange cry. This is too unfair. Lucas pulled Karel away and cornered him. Did you take advantage of Mia again? Why does Mia smell like your mark? I wailed inwardly. Oh my God, how am I going to explain this? Willard pulled Lucas away and protected his brother. What are you doing? This is my brother. I won't allow you to criticize him. Lucas scratched his head anxiously. He turned to me and grabbed my shoulder. Mia, tell me what happened. This is so unfair. Am I nothing to you? I love you so much. I didn't know what to say. Oh my goddess, why was this happening to me? Those guys also started to get loud. Kasim rushed over and grabbed my hand. Maya, have you forgotten about me? Am I not good enough? I know I was wrong in the past, but I really like you. Simon looked at me thoughtfully. His eyes were so clear, as if he was saying, Mia, why are you doing this to me? The room was a mess. I was so upset. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and shouted, all of you, shut up. Can you stop now? The 5 of them stopped talking at the same time and turned to look at me. I was so mad. I suddenly remembered the dream I had last night. I said in a calm voice, I had a dream last night. Do you want to hear it? Then the 5 of them all looked at me curiously. I told them about last night's dream and the 5 wolves in it. The 5 of them kept silent for a moment. They seemed to be thinking about something. Suddenly, the five of them looked at each other and seemed to be looking for an answer in each other's eyes. Then they nodded together. Carol was the first to speak. I understand what your dream means. Mia, I've decided that I want to stay by your side. I don't care if there are others around you. Locust rushed over to me, hugged me, and said, well, Mia is also mine. Mia, if you want to be with them, I also want you to spare enough time for me. I was stunned and looked at the others. Everyone nodded. Didn't your dream clearly tell us that we can be together? Since we're all your mates, we should just stay together. Locust had already picked me up and strode upstairs. Without looking back, he said, I don't care. Mia can only be mine today. I clearly love her the most. Why did all of you have sex with her before me? I wanted to. As he locked the door, I heard the rest of them outside shouting, Locust, you are being so unreasonable. Mia belongs to all of us. Please let me know by leaving a comment, please. Let me know by leaving a comment.